Welcome to the AFGHANEYE YouTube channel. If this is your first visit, make sure to subscribe and press the notification bell so that you won't miss any of our new videos.
بأول بسيارة ضد تويت جاغ مقالة دخبلة بروموتا ولا هغاهم تشيشيكا.
دروخهم samada. Okay, assalamu alaikum, dear listeners and viewers of the AFGHANEYE. Welcome to another live show. Today we are going to talk about new resistance against the Taliban that has been declared by the son of Ahmad Massoud, Ahmad Masood, in Afghanistan's Panjshir province. There are already some reports of skirmishes just outside Panjshir. We couldn't verify how accurate those reports are, but it is highly likely that we will see some fighting in the next few days, maybe weeks. So before we go any further, I want you all to just like the video, make sure that you like it and share it with everyone. So anyone who is interested, anyone who is curious about what's going to happen, is there going to be a civil war, and people who have been talking about Afghanistan in the last couple of days and weeks, share this live stream with them because we are going to talk about very important matters. Now,
and sorry Sangar,
yes.
just because we forgot the I want everyone who's also watching with us right now live to actually share the video on their socials and also like the video, because there are 40 something of you guys and there are only 12 likes, so there's no excuse to not like it. It's just a tap of the screen. But what I suggest is if we just wait for a couple of minutes, Sangar, because this is I mean, all of the live streams are important, but I would say this one is pretty important as well. So I would suggest just waiting for a couple of minutes and just until everyone comes through. Yes, we're getting more likes. Thank you guys. But there are 47 of you and only 24 likes so far. So, you know, no one's escaping me. Unless we get like 40 something likes, I'll be watching. All right, there we got 30. 32. All right, yeah, it's going. And just make sure you tweet out the link, guys. But in any case, up until we actually formally get started, Sangar Tsange, khbali khabirirato, katsakh sedi.
Alhamdulillah, the Allah fazl that I couldn't go to the gym the whole week because of all the things that were going on. So today I went to the gym. So I feel excellent. Alhamdulillah.
But does gym mean weightlifting in the Netherlands, or does it mean boxing?
Boxing, yeah. Generally gym, but I don't do weightlifting. It's boring. It's very boring.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Have you been exercising lately?
Not the last few days because of everything that's been going on, but yeah, I'm sort of excited to get back in, but the last few days have been absolutely mental. Warkar Dang is asking, do you do boxing or Muay Thai? Well, I mean, Sangar does boxing.
I'm old school. And Waleed, what do you do? Is it kickbox or what is it?
No, nothing whatsoever.
You're a man of peace.
I'm a pacifist. All right, okay. So we've got 40 likes. Just
guys, if you have any questions for us, make sure that you ask the question by tagging us, tag AFGHANEYE, and we will answer your questions at the end of the stream. So we will discuss everything first and then we will go to the questions. So in the meanwhile, if we see a short question or anything, we will definitely give short answers, but preferably the questions all the way at the end of the stream so that everything goes smoothly.
actually relevant to what we're talking about.
No India and Pakistan. No India and Pakistan. Okay. Please. We love Indians. We love Pakistanis. We are friends, but Not now, okay? All right. People are joining us now. Oy. Let me just share this as well.
Yeah, please do.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, finally. I mean, I don't want to be, but someone in the live chat said something after a long time that I can resonate with very strongly. Afghanistan should not be used as a pawn for either side. I agree, and neither should the live chat of the AFGHANEYE live stream be used as an arena where the two sides insult each other. Please.
Oh, guys, I'm sorry if I'm really quiet, but I'm tweeting and I can't do two things at the same time. All right. Okay. Yes. So let's go. First of all, let's just do. Yeah. So Ahmad Masood, the son of Ahmad Shah Massoud, has recently written an opinion piece in the what? What? What is it again? Anyways, in a
That
Western
didn't go
outlet.
according to plan.
Yes. So this article is basically an announcement of the resistance. And ahmed-waleed, you read the article. Before
Yes.
we dive into it, what was your first impression?
My first impression was I'm going to try being as diplomatic as I can be. It was very straight, very to the point in terms of what he aimed to achieve with the article. Um, but I guess it was what he aimed to what he aimed for it to be conveyed as a desperate-ish sort of plea for help. Um, Probably the worst part of the article was when he was praising that BHL Bernard
Henry
Henry,
Levy. Henry
yeah,
Levy.
like as a great sort of philosopher. That was probably the most one of the most intolerable parts of it. But
Yeah.
in any case, wait, just give me a second because we keep getting comments about the volume. Guys, can you hear me?
I think if we raise
Because
the volume, yeah,
JZ is saying, is it me or is the volume too low?
everyone else saying is that is saying that the volume is fine.
Okay, fair enough. So we were
Yeah.
continuing. So yeah, him characterizing Bernard Henry Levy as a great French philosopher. Uh, yeah, it wasn't pleasant to read. Um, but it was essentially in this plea for help, which is obviously military financial help against the Taliban for this sort of new resistance. He
Yeah.
also made prolific use of war on terror, like sound
Yeah.
bites, like radical
With
Islamic
regards to
terrorism.
Bernard Henry Levy, I want to just show people who he is, who we're talking about. So he is a guy who basically is a French philosopher, a
You
French.
tiptoes when he takes pictures so he can look
Yeah,
taller than other
I
people.
want to show that. So I'm going to show that so that people know who we're talking about.
What we're dealing with.
Yeah. So what we're dealing with, the great thinker, the great sage of the West, who Ahmad Masood is referring to. Uh, this guy has done some pretty funny stuff, and you are going to see that now. We're going to show you a picture of his bizarre behavior. Okay, so here we
Very,
go.
very, very befitting of a philosopher or a Western philosopher, anyway,
Yeah,
specifically a French philosopher.
yeah. You okay? Here we go. So, this is Bernard. Henry Levy, and this man, he why is he doing that? So Bernard Henry
Well, I'm
Levy,
just going to answer one question very quickly.
yeah,
What role did Massoud and the family play in Karzai's government as far as theft and corruption goes? I would assume there are loads of examples, but I think the most significant was Ahmad Massoud flying into Dubai with $52 million in cash.
yeah, that was all over the news. Okay,
Yeah.
so here is a picture of the white savior of the Kurds, Bernard Henry Levy, who was in northern Iraq in the Kurdish autonomous area, and he took picture with a few Kurdish leaders. But while he was posing with them, he stood on his toes so that he appears taller than the Kurds, and just guys in the chat, why would somebody do that? Just what do you think? What are your theories? What do you think? Why would anybody posing in a picture like that would stand on their toes? Okay.
Well, in
Anyways,
any case, that is that was the part of the article where he was describing this BHL guy as a great philosopher was annoying, but also what was annoying was the fact that he invoked what I would say are redundant sort of buzzwords, radical Islamist terrorism, especially for someone that, especially in Afghanistan, sort of makes use of religious symbolism and is, for all intents and purposes, somewhat we can consider an Islamist, right? But
because
in any case,
he says my mujahideen and we're doing jihad. And he
exactly.
does mention all of that stuff.
Exactly. But in any case, without further ado, let us get into. Should we get into this article or the background to this
I
article?
will say first we go back to the background. So
To where it
yeah,
began.
where it begins. Yes.
Okay, so where it begins. Tweet me les gelede.
Yes, I have it.
أو بيوبرتها بصير زنبيا تبصير وربندي
Samada.
كأمة.
Samada. Okay. So I will just show the article that Ahmad Masood wrote when on
You nearly said Ahmad Masood.
yeah, on 14th of April 2020. So shortly after the signing of the Doha deal, he wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times, and I'm going to just share that with you guys here. Whoop, here we go. So this is the tweet, and this is the article that he wrote on 14th of April 2020.
Sure. So as we can see, what's written, we're going to dissect the article itself, but for the time being, I want everyone to keep this at the back of your minds. He's tweeted, as Afghanistan prepares to begin peace negotiations amid a political crisis, I propose that decentralization of power and wealth is imperative to a lasting peace, which can end this 200-year-old conflict. 200-year-old conflict. I want everyone to remember that. Put that in the back of your head because we're going to come back to it. Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of what the article actually is.
Okay, so do you want me to grab those quotes? Yeah?
Yes, please. Yes,
Okay.
please. So guys, like he's tweeted, this article is basically saying that one of the problems of Afghanistan's political setup is the fact that power is centralized in Kabul. So let's bear that in mind while Sangat pulls out the quotes from the article and we can dissect them together.
Yeah. So you also wrote an article in response to this opinion piece, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys, if you are interested in what Waleed had to say about this article, you can read the article on our website, afghaneye.org. You can go there and just
The
look.
article's title is Decentralization, the Final Stand of Afghan Warlords.
Yeah, so what you need to do is just in the search bar on our website, just type in Ahmad Masood and you will get the article. Okay. Okay. So
And guys, I would appreciate if we could if we could focus on the topic in the live chat. Um, I humbly request that, because at least today we're not hosting an India versus Pakistan debate. So
okay,
I'll be more kind and civil in asking for it for the topic to remain on topic today.
all right. So here are the quotes. So the first quote, the 2014 constitution may have assuaged the former monarchy's beneficiaries, but it completely ignored the fundamental political transformation of the country through the upheavals of the past 4 decades. It has largely remained irrelevant to practical politics in Afghanistan. Now, what does that mean?
So what he's saying here, he's talking about the 2004 constitution, which is the theoretically still the constitution of Afghanistan. It was the constitution that Ashraf Ghani was insisting that the Taliban accept. But what he's saying is that the 2004 constitution was written to sort of placate the former monarchy's allies, right? So he's probably talking about Karzai and the like here. But what he's actually ignoring is the fact that his family, his uncles, were very prominent in the post 2001 setup, including the drafting of the constitution. They did have a role, and not just his uncles, but obviously allies of his uncles. And we're talking about people from his native Panjshir, like Yunus Qanuni, like Qasim Fame, and so on and so forth. So essentially, he's obfuscating the 2004 constitution by saying that his party didn't have much to do with it, whereas nothing could be further from the case. But in any case, let's continue. So with regard to the constitution and the centralized nature of the state, he says that more dangerously, in a multi-ethnic society, the centralized unitary presidential system has fanned the flames of internal conflict. The problem is exacerbated when a particular person or group holding the presidency resorts to divisive and ethnocentric policies in a country made up of ethnic minorities. Such policies by the Afghan state has sharpened ethnic identity and nationalism among all ethnic groups. Now, I would agree with that, but I would also say that, you know what I would also say with regard to that is irrelevant, because I'm not going to sit here saying Ashraf Ghani was not uniquely bad. I mean, he wasn't uniquely bad in my opinion. That's my humble opinion. People can disagree with me, but he's essentially saying that President Ashraf Ghani has resorted to policies that sharpen ethno-nationalism. And I would agree, and I would say that the same thing applied even prior to President Ashraf Ghani. But in any case, he is
Just 1 second.
saying, Mhm.
To be more specific, after 2001, when the United States invaded Afghanistan, the whole idea of the invasion was we're going to use all these different factions, and all these different factions were seen as representatives of different ethnic groups, and that's how the foundation was laid for a regime where everything revolved around distributing power, wealth, prestige to different leaders who were then seen as representatives of or leaders of those ethnic groups. So the Masood family were also seen as the representatives of Tajiks. Yes, carry on.
Exactly. That is the case. So I would say that this isn't something that's been new under President Ghani, and I would also say that this sort of push for decentralization is interesting because it never happened under President Karzai. That's for good reason, because President Karzai kept the Massoud family, amongst others, very close to his circle and made sure to accommodate them. But what he's saying is that, he goes on to say, and he says, the patronage of a particular group by the head of state has created a major cleavage in our society and nourished a sense of disenfranchisement among all ethnic groups, constituting a major source of conflict in the country for decades. My father, Ahmad Masood, the national hero of Afghanistan, was one of the few leaders in our history who was able to unite the ethnic groups under one banner. He brought together important Pashtun, Tajik, Uzbek, and Hazara leaders. What do you say about that, Sankar?
Well, that's very ironic because the article that you wrote a year ago, you also shared a tweet in that article, a video clip where you can hear Ahmad Shah Massoud being very, how would you characterize that?
Bigoted,
Bigoted
prejudiced.
towards Pashtuns, yes. So
Yes.
his father is on record. We have the video, we have his statement. It's on our website. If you go to the article, then you can see that video. It's embedded in the article. So his father,
And
yeah,
another point I would make is that it's certainly the patronage of a particular group by the head of state. So I don't know which group he's referring to. Is he talking about Pashtuns as a whole, or is he talking about the problematic sort of nationalist demographic within, let's say, urban, educated, and secular Pashtuns? But he's saying that there's been a sense of disenfranchisement among all ethnic groups. Now, that's 100% the case, but what he's not mentioning is that a lot of that disenfranchisement stems from the feeling that the country is occupied and at war. Not, it's not like if you ask a lot of people what
yeah,
their concerns would be, there would be corruption amongst it. That's perhaps, maybe there would be ethnocentric divisive policies. There would be weak leadership, right? There'd be a lack of skill or effectiveness of the bureaucracy. But a lot of the times it would just be there's a bloody war going on, right? The constitutional mechanisms of how the government works wouldn't really be the focal point of most people's sense of disenfranchisement. And that would be particularly the case for Pashtuns, who President Ghani, whilst he was claimed to have represented Pashtuns by both people on the opposing side as well as on his side, I would say that Pashtuns probably got the short end of the stick with regard to the government of the last 2 decades, solely because of the war on terror. So, whilst it is true that there's a sense of disenfranchisement amongst all of these different ethnicities, to pin it down solely to the constitutional mechanism of a very distant government in Kabul, to most people, the government in Kabul was almost a non existent government, right? And a lot of the people, quite frankly, a lot of Afghans would be illiterate, would probably have never seen a government official. They wouldn't have the capacity or the knowledge of the constitution to know what is centralized and what is decentralized, right? So, it's the correct diagnosis. I mean, no, there's a correct observation of an illness, but the diagnosis of it is very flawed. But in any case, we go on.
okay. So should we go now to his latest article?
No, now we're going to go back to his tweet,
Aha.
200 years.
Yes. So the 200 years. All right. Here we go.
All right. So, once again, because we've got a load of people joining, and by the way, we've got 300 plus people at the moment. Guys, whoever's new here, I want to see the like button being hit by all of you guys, because that's the only way other people will get to see us. And also share the link, because we're obviously talking about something important. Ali Sina is saying, you heard just one speech of Ahmad Shah Massoud and you called him bigoted. What about his actions? He was not bigoted against Pashtuns. Well, I mean, if someone is saying, as a political leader to an audience, is saying racist things, bigoted things, then maybe he may or may not have been racist, but he was certainly using racism and ethno-sectarianism to rile up his base. As for his actions, that's a totally different story. But if you're interested, you're also free to read my article on Ahmad Shah Massoud's actions. But in any case, so we go back to the tweet that Ahmad Massoud sent out when he was promoting this article. And he said, quote, I propose that decentralization of power and wealth is imperative to a lasting peace which can end this 200-year-old conflict. Now, which 200-year conflict is he talking about, Sangur?
I have honestly no idea. Well,
Okay.
like Afghanistan
Would
has
you
been,
agree with me?
yeah,
Would you agree with me that Afghanistan has had many conflicts over the last 200 years?
agree.
But would you also agree in saying that there hasn't been this 200-year conflict? There hasn't been one long, it's not like the 70 years war or the 30 years war.
No,
It's
because
not, yeah.
there were wars in Afghanistan fought between different rivaling members of the royal family,
Yeah.
the civil wars, and then you had the war against the British occupiers. Um, and then you had the war of King Abdurrahman Khan against different groups in the country because he wanted to create a unified state. And after that, uh,
The war against Amanullah, then the war against
yes,
Kalakani, and then there were rebellions by the Mangal and the Safi and
yeah,
all of these other tribes. But there's not one war that you can point out.
all
Would
wars
you
were
agree?
for different reasons, fought by
Hmm.
different people for different, yeah, from different groups, and there is no constant in all these wars. There is no relation between these
Okay.
different wars. No.
So when Ahmad Massoud says, I propose that decentralize, and once again, I spoke about this the other day, like how and important words are, and when people write things, as a writer myself, every single word is very deliberate. Okay, you take people at their word, especially if it's written, because it's not like a slip of the tongue. This is, this has been typed out on a keyboard. But when Ahmad Massoud says, I propose that decentralization of our power and wealth is imperative to a lasting peace which can end this 200-year conflict. Well, now here's the thing. This 200-year conflict, he's obviously, in his mind, there's only one conflict over the last 200 years. Contrary to what you and I think, this is what he thinks. Now, if decentralization is the panacea to the conflict, it necessarily means that the conflict is about the centralization of power, right?
Yes.
But looking at Afghan history, can we honestly really say that? We can't, right?
No. No.
But what he's saying, the 200-year sort of timeline is interesting, because we could say that the Afghan state started to slowly consolidate itself roughly around 200 years ago. That's when Ahmad Shah Baba's dynasty fell, the Muhammadzai came in, and then they had their intra-Muhammadzai rivalry, and the state slowly started to form. So what he's saying here is that and what he said in the article is that one group or one person holds power in a centralized system, and that is the cause of this 200-year conflict. Now, who are that one group? Well, let's think of it this way, okay? Ashraf Ghani, and I'm sorry, we're going to have to go into the tribal dynamics here, but, it's necessary. The only thing over the past 200 years that all of these rulers share in common is a Pashtun ethnicity. Now everyone's going to be like, well, yeah, obviously. But in a monarchical system, in a system where power is transferred from father to son or brother to brother or cousin to cousin, obviously the people are going to belong to the same ethnicity. If I'm a Pashtun, my son is not going to be an Uzbek, right? Especially in a patrilineal, patriarchal society. So it's true that all of these rulers, other than Kalakani and maybe Rabbani, were all Pashtuns. But now we look at, you have Muhammadzai Pashtuns up until 1978. Then you have Taraki Ghilzai. You have Hafizullah Amin Ghilzai. You have Babrak Karmal, who was a self-identifying Pashtun, but not actually a Pashtun. And then Mullah Omar and all of these people. So you have Pashtuns of different tribal backgrounds, different rural backgrounds, different from different provinces.
And most importantly, people with totally different political beliefs, ideas, political parties.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. So a lot of these people, to say that Dost Muhammad Khan and Dawood Khan followed this up were the same thing because they came from the same tribe is nonsensical. People follow different beliefs. Even Zahir and Dawood had ideological differences with each other. So he's saying that the sole cause, this conflict in Afghanistan has lasted for 200 years. He's saying that it's lasted because one group of people have held power in a centralized polity, And that one group of people he's saying are Pashtuns. So he's conflating all of these rulers with Pashtuns, and according to him, that is why there's a conflict in Afghanistan, right?
And
This is logical deduction here, by the way.
Yes.
This isn't me putting words in his mouth. This is, if anyone has a counter proposal, I'm willing to hear it. But this is the logical deduction of everything that he said from the tweet to the article. So we can establish that what he is in essence opposed to, right, is a centralized government in which Pashtuns would be present or would be influential, which is amusing because a centralized government with Jamiatis, we didn't really hear much controversy. And Ahmad Massoud's not the only one pushing for a decentralized government right now. It's his uncles and his father's political allies.
And some Western academics.
And some Western academics. Now, here's the thing. Decentralization and quick, efficient government is the ideal, but the circumstances under which it arrives matters almost as much as the end product. So we can now logically deduce what Ahmad Massoud was saying, and that is that a centralized government in Kabul, right, without giving autonomy to people, and that is a setup in which Pashtuns are predominant, is something that he views as problematic, right? Rightly or wrongly. We're not obviously going to go into the rights and wrongs and the benefits and the drawbacks, but we're genuinely trying to explain here, by logical deduction, what all of these veiled words, sentences, and tweets mean, because he's obviously done this with the help of others, and he's a politician. It's very deliberate, right? That's what we
discussed. We discussed strategic communication last night. So if you guys want to know about how politicians, people in politics, use language to communicate ideas and in the media, I urge you to watch last night's live stream.
Okay.
Please.
So now we know, once again, for everyone that's newly joined, because now we've got quite a few more people, now we know Ahmad Massoud's problem is a centralized Pashtun predominant setup in Kabul, rightly or wrongly. He may be entitled to that as someone who's not a Pashtun, right? He would want some sort of representation. Now, that was where it started. Okay,
yes.
That was where it started. Now let's fast forward to now. Ali Sina is saying, will you answer the comment section? I'm really sorry, Ali Sina. We actually need a moderator.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, Cloud Strife is also saying this chat needs some governance. Do we have any...
We need a centralized government in the chat.
Yeah.
And we haven't received any application for, nobody has... applied for the job of becoming a moderator, so we're still waiting for the...
I'm muting a couple of people. I'm going to have to temporarily zone out whilst I mute a couple of people, because we've started to attract what seem to be Indian trolls, which I don't get, because we're talking about Ahmad Massoud and decentralization.
Okay.
But in any case, the world, dunya andasile waneda. But just give me a second, guys. I'm going to have to be centralized and KJ Khan is saying, hire me.
Okay, KJ Khan, just send us an email and you will... Yeah, you know what, KJ Khan
I've had enough of it. KJ Khan is the moderator.
All right,
KJ Khan, it's all your responsibility now,
okay.
Yeah? I trust that you do the correct thing, and consider this your trial. If... we're happy. We'll
KJ Khan, rule with the iron fist in the chat.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So now we know what Ahmad Massoud's issue is. That was where it started last year. Now, obviously, since last year, a lot of things have happened. Namely, that despite the fact that President Ashraf Ghani and the Taliban were totally different in terms of ideology, perspective, and whatever, but for one reason or another, for better or worse, they both happen to belong to the same ethnic group, which means that for people like Ahmad Massoud, it's just the same old story again, right? Now, and that's not me putting words in his mouth, that's a result of the logical deduction of him grouping everyone in the same box. Now, Sangar, where are we now?
That Ahmad Massoud and Amrullah Saleh's fighters are trying to take districts back from the Taliban, But we also received reports this evening from Baghlan. People are saying that a large convoy of Taliban have arrived in Baghlan to
Whereabouts in Baghlan, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't really know exactly where, because you see, let's just go to it's easier if I show you guys the map. So just 1 second, I will put up the map of Panjshir first.
KJ Khan has got to work with speed. I'm seeing loads of messages deleted, etc. So yeah, we may consider hiring KJ Khan on a sort of a temporary fixed hours contract.
Yes, great job. All right, so this is the map of Panjshir province. Am I correct? Yes.
I don't think you are. That's Kapisa.
No, 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 no. No,
That's Kapisa.
that's Panjshir.
That's Kapisa.
I'm
I'm
positive.
pretty sure that's Kapisa.
Okay. All right.
So you see, the province to its west is Baghlan, and the province to its southwest is Parwan, and the province.
No. This Waleed, I'm definitely sure this is Panjshir. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's Kapisa. I'm telling you, that's Kapisa. Trust me.
No, that's okay. That's Panjshir. Okay, trust me. This is Panjshir's map. So what I'm showing, we are having a debate here on geography, but trust me on this. This is Panjshir, and Panjshir is a small province just to the north of Parwan and Kabul, and the big province next to Panjshir on its west is Baghlan. So I'm going to now show you the map of Baghlan. I'm going to just add Baghlan here. Just 1 second. Okay, so here we go with the map of Baghlan, where there are reports right now of skirmishes. And Baghlan is a province that is strategically very important because it connects the central, Kabul, those areas with the north. And since Panjshir is a small province surrounded with a lot of mountains, if they want access to the north, to other regions, the first thing they need to do is take control of roads connecting Panjshir to the rest of the country, especially the north. So for that reason, it makes sense that they have tried to attack Baghlan province. So this is the map of Baghlan province, which you see right now in red. And what is now happening is that if you go through Kabul, Parwan to the north, you have to cross into Baghlan, and then you will reach northern provinces such as Balkh, Takhar, etc. And the bordering districts with Panjshir, so if you see the southeast of Baghlan province, that small portion, that's where there is currently reports of fighting going on. Okay, now let me just show you Panjshir again. So Panjshir is a province that used to be Panjshir used to be a district of Parwan province. Okay, provinces and districts in Afghanistan have changed over time. There were many changes, but after 2001. Panjshir became a province because a lot of important leaders of the Northern Alliance were from Panjshir. So making that area a province was a political decision, sort of to give people of Panjshir some status and prestige. Um, right now, okay, so yes. So this is the map of Panjshir. I'm sorry, guys, for all the confusion here, but okay, Waleed, please carry on.
So, I wasn't saying, I'm still pretty sure that that's Kapisa, but but I'm just gonna drop it. But I don't really have anything to say because I haven't kept I haven't really been keeping up to date with the news with regard to sort of any armed instances of uh, Hikmat J is saying it's Panjshir homes. I swear to you, I don't believe it is, but I'm just dropping it. Just I'm gonna do research afterwards because I don't trust the map. But
Bro, I had to memorize all parts of Afghanistan when I was a kid in school. You
okay,
have to trust me here.
okay, but bro, okay, wait. Can we go to the map? Right. Let's go to the
Yes.
map very quickly. What is the province immediately south of the highlighted province?
The province immediately south is Kapisa. The one to its west is Parwan. The one to its east is Nuristan. And the one to its southeast is
Okay,
Laghman.
okay. I forfeit. You guys are right. You got me. You got me. The weird Africa-shaped one is Kapisa. Okay, okay, yeah, fair enough. I got the two mixed up, but which is pretty embarrassing because the south and the southeast I know off by heart, but my own Shamali area, I've obviously got to have some work to do. But in any
Shame on
case,
you.
honestly, shame on me. But in any case, yeah, so I haven't actually kept up to date with a lot of the stuff that's being said. And that's purely just because we've been inundated with other news, like the Taliban are burning women who don't cook good food for them, etc., etc. I know there was a tweet sent out by the former Minister of Defense called
Bismillah Khan. He
Bismillah
announced,
Khan Mohammed.
yeah, he
Announced
announced
that
that
jihad basically he said it's a religious obligation to resist against the Taliban, which is also one of the factors of what we're discussing here, which is this uprising or this insurgency, etc., against the Taliban government. And for the first time, the Taliban, rather than being the ones to use hit and run tactics, are actually the victims of it now. It's different being an insurgency and it's different being the government. I hope this is solved sort of peacefully and whatever. But we had the former defense minister who was cursing Ashraf Ghani a couple of days ago, saying that it's a religious obligation to resist the Taliban.
yeah. So, Bismillah Mohammadi, the former Minister of Defense, he was basically the one who announced that they have captured Pulaisar, is a district in Baghlan. And he said that we are currently active there. There is also a video circulating that is shot somewhere in rural Afghanistan. And you see the typical clothes of people who wear in Panjshir and around Panjshir.
What kind of clothes are they?
So
just describe it.
yeah, so they wear a pakul, so the wool hat with a Palestinian shawl, and often
True cosmopolitans.
yeah, and they also wear these military style vests with pockets, you know, the stuff people wear when they go out fishing and stuff like that. So and with traditional Afghan clothes, you know, the kamis partuk, or sometimes they wear they really imitate Ahmad Masood. They wear military uniform, with boots.
The pakol on the side of
Yes,
the head,
yes.
almost about.
So there was a video circulating, people dressed up like that, somewhere in a village, talking with guns, and they were saying, yeah, we took this area. And that's apparently the center of Pulaisar district in Baghlan.
Yeah, got it. I'm just keeping up to date with the live chat. Hikmat J is saying the K in KJ Khan stands for Kalashnikov. This guy doesn't miss.
Okay. Okay, guys, now let's just move to today's article of Ahmad Masood, because obviously this article is very significant. It is the announcement of a new national resistance against the Taliban. And now, so far, we have discussed what Ahmad Masood said last year. He was against a centralized government. Even though he didn't mention it, he was sort of alluding to the fact that Pashtuns have ruled over Afghanistan, even though they were all different Pashtuns with different political parties and ideas. The gist of his argument last year was, we want a decentralized government in Afghanistan because we don't want Pashtuns to rule over us. Now that's the story of last year. Now, beginning of the month of August, in all parts of northern Afghanistan, the Taliban took many districts. Important areas that they took first were in Badakhshan and Takhar. Those provinces are considered traditionally as strongholds of Northern Alliance because Jamiat Islami is present in those areas. However, those provinces fell very quickly without a bullet being fired to the Taliban. So the north of Afghanistan is basically under Taliban control. The south is under Taliban control. Basically, the whole country is taken within like 10 days by the Taliban. And we have just a small pocket in Panjshir of what is now referred to as the new national resistance. And to announce this national resistance, Ahmad Masood wrote this article. And Waleed, we've already discussed interesting impression from just reading the article. Can you tell us what is the main argument that he's making in this article?
Well, the Taliban pose an imminent danger to the West, and if the West wants to not be attacked, then it should help him against the Taliban.
Okay. There is a quote in this article that really raised my eyebrows, and that is when he says, "We have stores of ammunition and arms that we have patiently collected since my father's time because we knew this day might come." Now, why is this quote in the article so important? After 2001, we had a new government under US occupation, and this new government was supposed to be a civil democratic government and not a government of militias and armed groups. And as part of this new setup, there was a program called DDR, and DDR was a program that was intended to disarm all militias, all armed groups in Afghanistan without exemption. Now, we have in 2021, after the fall of that regime, Ahmad Masood, who his uncles, everyone was part of the government in the last 20 years, he is basically admitting that they sabotaged the DDR program that was intended to disarm everyone. And he says, we basically secretly stashed weapons and we didn't surrender our weapons. So basically undermining the government that was created where they were a prominent part of. They basically
almost the creators of the new government.
Yeah. So even though they had a major role in the government in the last 20 years, they undermined it by secretly stashing weapons. Now, if he stashes
amongst other things,
yes,
a lot of money as well.
Yeah, so his uncles, everyone, they have huge mansions in Dubai and in Turkey and United States. So
this reminds me of another thing. In his article from a year ago, he was saying that the government likes to divert state resources to its favored regions. And I remember when I read that, I thought, yeah, this government's favored regions and your uncle's favorite regions are one and the same, and generally they're in Dubai.
Yeah. So what's important is that in the last 20 years they stashed weapons. Now, if he talks about from my father's time, which he says in the article, my father's time, so his father's time, that was in the 90s. Back then, there was no government, there was no DDR, there was no civil democratic system, blah, 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 blah. So if he stashed weapons from that time, yes, we know that. But they stashed weapons in the last 20 years. And where did they get those weapons? Those weapons were given by the international community, most importantly by the Americans, to the government of Afghanistan. And the intention was so that those weapons can be used by the legitimate government, supposedly, of Afghanistan. But they were taking those weapons and stashing them in Panjshir. So he admits that they were being very corrupt.
Yeah, and keep that in mind. KJ Khan, I would just say, I understand you're deleting messages, but if someone's sort of notorious for spamming, just hide them from the channel. That's also an option, you know. Feel free to do that, and we delegate that authority to you as a centralized government to do that. But in any case, so yeah, and another issue or something else to observe here is that how can you appease a constituency or a group that even when they were the creators of a new government were also stashing weapons and money simultaneously parallel to the new government that they had also created? That's a question I suspect that the Taliban need to now sort of figure out. How can you appease such a group? But in any case, we're not here to do policy recommendations, thankfully. That stuff is boring. But in any case, let's get into the article. Frank Adado donated £5. Thank you very much. What's your projection on the talks between the Northern Alliance and the Taliban? Please turn on slow mode. I don't know how to turn on slow mode, but because you've donated to us so kindly, I'm just going to respond quickly. We've received reports, Sangar and myself, that a delegation from Kabul, who I will not name, I'll not name the individuals in that delegation, but a delegation from Kabul consisting of people from the former regime as well as from the new government, whatever you want to call it, have gone to Panjshir for negotiations. I personally believe that it's not unlikely that you'll see a political settlement in which there won't be any fighting. This could be resolved more peacefully, and that is because Ahmad Massoud, the reason he started this resistance is he knows the Taliban are weak, not militarily, but politically and diplomatically, and this is the best time to push. And the Taliban also know that he doesn't really have the capacity to wage a war for too long. AYK also asked the question and sent a super chat. That question is, what has been the policy of Pashtun leaders towards other ethnicities in the past 200 years? AYK, I could do an entire podcast on that because 200 years is a long period of time, and there are about 9 to 10 Pashtun rulers, all of whom had their own personalities, had their own perspectives, had their own policies. But in general, I would say up until, I would say in Abdurrahman Khan's time, there was an impetus. Abdurrahman Khan spent the first part of his kingdom basically trying to subdue and weaken the Pashtun tribes. And eventually he achieved that to a large extent by sending them, deporting them at first, and then sending them across the country to guard the borders. As time went on, and there was the realization of a need for an Afghan national identity, there were attempts to sort of cultivate a national identity in which all Afghans sort of could feel varying extents of identification, but by and large it was crafted around the Pashtun sort of, we have Pashtunwala or AFGHANEYE, which are now by and large similar. That sort of Pashtun history was very sort of a prominent part. But it wasn't just Pashtun history. For example, you have the Wazir Akbar Khan medal, but then you also have the Mir Masjidi Khan medal. And Mir Masjidi Khan was a Naqshbandi Sufi leader from Kohistan in and around Kapisa. So whilst the state was sort of, it did see itself as trying to placate Pashtuns. It understood that Pashtuns, especially from the Paktiar region, posed the greatest threat to its legitimacy and to its governance. It settled loads of nomadic tribes, some of them forcefully, because it understood that. It ended up sort of with favoritistic policies towards Pashtun tribes of Paktiar in order to bring them on board. But in all honesty, the question you're asking, my friend, my brother, is so vast. I could
Yeah.
go on and speak
We
about it
should
for 2 hours.
definitely do a show where we just cover this particular aspect of it. But anyway, so let's move back to the article. So there is another quote in the article that also is worth discussing. Ahmad Masood, in his latest op-ed, says, "We also have the weapons carried by the Afghans who, over the past 72 hours, have responded to my appeal to join the resistance in Panjshir. We have soldiers from the Afghan regular army who were disgusted by the surrender of their commanders and are now making their way to the hills of Panjshir with their equipment. Former members of the Afghan Special Forces have also joined our struggle." Now, why is this important? Because
Is it
what
possible for you, bro, to put the quotes on the screen so we could read along?
Yeah, it's I have to make a screenshot and etc. It's going to
Okay.
take a little bit of time.
But
But
I just
yeah,
before I miss it, Buck Fiden, and I'm not joking around here, that's the official username, just sent another super chat of $5. Thank you very much, Buck Fiden. I think China set this up for Afghanistan to become North Korea 2.0. That's a fair opinion. But thank you very much for the donation, for the super chat.
okay, so this quote that I just read, basically Ahmad Masood is saying that those members of the Afghan armed forces of the previous regime who were disgusted by the surrender of their commanders, along with their weapons and ammunition, they have all they are all seeking refuge in Panjshir and preparing to be part of the resistance. Now, why is this very important? You see, if we have observed the collapse of all different provinces in the last 2 weeks, what we know is that what happened, the Taliban approached local shuras, local councils of elders, imams, council of doctors, council of shopkeepers, council of religious scholars and businessmen, and they told these councils that if you tell the Afghan army, the police in your district, that if that we will not harm them, and if they surrender, there will be no bloodshed. They intervened and they just went on to convince the soldiers to not to basically
Surrender.
abstain from fighting. That's how all these areas collapsed. It wasn't as a decision by major commanders or anything. It was on a local level, and that's how Taliban took the whole country basically without barely firing a single shot. So when he says that those armed forces who are disgusted by because their commanders have surrendered, they have all joined the resistance in Panjshir. I would say I seriously I don't believe that. I don't believe that there were thousands and thousands of soldiers who felt betrayed. Like, okay, for instance, you have a garrison in Kunduz, or you have a huge garrison in Herat. You have a huge garrison in other areas. There are so many soldiers there. There is one leading commander, and that guy says, "Guys, give up, go home." And everyone who actually wants to fight, do you really think that they will say, okay? No, because technically saying that they shouldn't fight is an act of treason. So whenever a commanding officer commits an act of treason, his fellow soldiers, they can just depose him and someone else assumes the role of commander. But why didn't that happen? The reason why that didn't happen, because most armed forces in Afghanistan didn't want to fight. They said, look, the Americans are leaving, the government is corrupt, why should we go and fight our own fellow countrymen? This is the most important reason why so many armed forces have surrendered. They didn't surrender because somebody had a huge conspiracy and betrayed everyone. That's not the case. How can a country, mind you, we have been told several times by Afghan armed forces, by the government, and by the Americans that Afghanistan has more than 300,000 armed forces. So how is it possible that an army of 300,000, they just allow Taliban to take the whole country in a matter of few days because a few bad apples, bad commanders have surrendered? That doesn't make sense. So his claim is just nonsense. Okay?
And there's another thing as well. He's saying that in the past 72 hours, I sort of made this call for people to join us, and they've joined us from all across the country. Like, you think when you announce an armed resistance to the Taliban are just going to stand aside as visibly armed men walk towards Panjshir to fight against them and start an insurrection? Like, the Taliban, you know, they're just, as we would say, ila ma'amala, like everyone's just walking to Panjshir, and the Taliban haven't bat an eyelid. So yeah, I find it problematic in my own thing as well. But I can say I'm very happy to have an answer. A couple of days ago, we had a live stream, and someone was like, Ahmed-waleed, where is General Sami Sadat? Right? But now, apparently they weren't wrong for asking me, because now I can say that he is apparently in Panjshir. And the former, or the current chief of the defense staff, Alizé, is also, I don't think I was asked where he is, but I can now confirm that he is also in Panjshir. So yeah, it does seem that a couple of special forces, certain figures have made it to Panjshir, but to make it out like there's a mass exodus of people migrating to Panjshir is you know, it serves the political narrative.
And most importantly, while Panjshir is a valley that is surrounded by high mountains, and that's why it's very inaccessible, it doesn't really make sense that people from all across the country can just drive in their Ford Rangers and their Humvees all the way to Panjshir without Taliban noticing them. You know what? If you understand the nature of warfare in Afghanistan, Afghanistan is a country with a lot of mountains, a lot of hills, and it's a very rugged country, and there aren't that many roads. Okay. This is why it's so difficult to fight in Afghanistan. There are that many roads. So if people want to move from one part of the country to another part of the country while they are basically fighting against the ruling regime, it's very difficult. They can't just go and drive from one part to the other part. So this is another reason why this whole claim that all these people have joined the resistance doesn't make sense. It's just most likely a couple of guys who were in Kabul when they decided that the regime cannot no longer stand. They all tried to board helicopters and airplanes. They tried to cross the border into Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and their flights, they were denied the right to land. So when they were denied the right to land, it is most likely that they were forced to fly back, and the only place where they could land easily without any trouble was Panjshir. And they are most likely people who flew there in helicopters. So yes, they may have Black Hawk helicopters. They may have those, what's that other helicopter they're using? The one that also...
Chinook?
No, those small helicopters they use to spray pesticides. It's a very small helicopter, but they use those things. So it's not like they have a huge standing army with all the equipment and everything. That's just not true, because we have also seen reports that a lot of military equipment was taken by the Taliban when they took all these big garrisons across the country. Okay, there are now people who are advocating that the Americans should go and wherever they see a helicopter or armored vehicles in garrisons or airfields, they should bomb them so that the Taliban don't use them. There are hundreds and hundreds of those things all across the country. So do they all fit in Panjshir? Did he take all the valuable equipment there? I seriously doubt it.
Oh, sure. So let's move on. And there's a video I sent you, Sanger. I haven't actually watched it, but someone replied with this video to me on Twitter. We'll explore it in a bit. Just give me a sec. So, but yeah, so that is but let's continue to dissect the article. So what else did he say?
So what he also said in the article, he said that so basically he bragged about how much weapons he has, and then he said, but that is not enough. If Taliban warlords launch an assault, they will
So he used the word warlords to describe
yes.
Taliban.
Yeah, so
Very
yeah.
interesting. Okay.
So if the Taliban warlords launch an assault, they will of course face staunch resistance from us. The flag of the National Resistance Front will fly over every position that they attempt to take, as the National United Front flag flew 20 years ago. He's referring to the flag that was used by the Northern Alliance, Jamiat, yeah, during the time when the Taliban were ruling over Afghanistan. I'm just going to quickly show you guys which flag he is talking about. Just bear with me a second.
I want to hear what everyone's opinions are on this flag, because personally, I don't think it's nice, but that's just sort of on a purely aesthetic level.
I would say the colors are sort of actually. I like the colors. It's like
really,
yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like it just looks wrong. Like I don't know. It doesn't. It's not aesthetically appealing.
Let's agree to disagree.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Warkardang is saying, I think it's better than the red, black, green. I don't think so, man. I think the red, black, green is decent.
Okay, so this flag is currently the flag of the National Resistance.
Okay, this actually looks decent, but you know when it has the coat of arms and the white, that's what makes it look really ugly.
Okay. But they basically, this picture was posted recently on social media. This picture is taken in Panjshir, and they have raised this huge flag. What's also important to notice is that you see in the background the landscape of Panjshir. You see really high mountains. Basically, this is a small, very lush green valley surrounded by those high mountains. Okay. So yeah, so basically, when he is referring to the flag in his article, what he's saying is that they will basically put up a resistance against the Taliban under this banner, under this flag, as they are all united. And what I also noted in this specific quote that I read, he's saying. As the National Front, as the National United Front flag flew 20 years ago. Yeah, so he's referring to the time of his father. Yet we know that our military force and logistics will not be sufficient. They will be rapidly depleted unless our friends in the West can find a way to supply us without delay. Now, what do you think about this, Waleed?
Well, what he's trying to do is he's trying to obviously draw a parallel between 2021 and the late 90s. In the late 90s, obviously, the West, to some extent, sort of helped out his father against the Taliban, just as India, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Russia, and Iran did. So he's basically, and his father's reputation was really sort of enhanced by that sort of image of him fighting against this, you know, evil, dark, tribal, backwards. And I say dark because these guys also wore dark clothes and black turbans and had black beards. So his father's reputation was really enhanced in that time. And that's when sort of, and then his father obviously died as a result of that and was sort of, you know, posthumously just sanctified almost. So he's trying to draw a parallel with that. And if you look at just the general way in which he dresses, even the way he wears his pakol, it's almost like I am my father 2.0. This cause or this struggle is my father's struggle 2.0. And because my father was a hero and he was a righteous man, it necessitates that this struggle is also a righteous struggle. And that's why he's not saying that if people in the West sympathize with me, he's already assuming that they are his friends, our friends in the West. You see, he's not saying, Do you see what I'm getting at here? He's already it's an assumed friendship that people in the West are said to have to share with him. And yeah, I think there's another part of the article as well
Yeah,
in
but
which he
before we
basically
go to the next
yeah.
article, what's important here is that I really like the way he has written this article. Okay,
Mhm.
he applies very important elements. So he's calling them friends. He's saying that they're fighting for the same freedom, just like referring to Bernard Henry Levy. So he is trying to be relatable to the West, and he says we believe in freedom, girls so that they can go to school, etc. So he does all. He touches upon all the right markers.
Ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, he ticks all the boxes to appeal to the West. But here's the problem with this article. It's not so much that he has written something that is totally useless. I don't believe that some of the things that he says are true. But if you want to convince a Western audience, this is how to do it. He's doing it very well. But here is something that I also noticed is that if the West were really his friends, as he claims, if the West really cared about him, his struggle, the freedoms, etc., they would never withdraw all their troops, sign an agreement with the Taliban, and then basically abandon them. They have now the United States. Their official stance is that they do not recognize Ashraf Ghani as the legitimate president of Afghanistan any longer. Okay, so they have abandoned them. They have basically sold them out, and it's very unfortunate, but that's the reality. That's the reality. They don't see these guys as friends. They don't really feel obliged to support them any longer. So his appeal might be very well articulated, but sorry, but those guys really don't care any longer for you.
But I mean, we could say it's a well-written piece, but in general, let's keep with the theme of him basically appealing to the West on its terms. Now, here's also a fundamental difference, and this is where I would say that this PR strategy inevitably it failed. Okay, when you are appealing to do the two different audiences, that's fine. But if those two audiences disagree with each other on fundamental things, eventually you're going to have problems. And I understand that this is someone's going to say, well, he's not really thinking about the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I get that. But this was also the problem of the previous regime. At home, we would have the hadith used, حب الوطن من الإيمان. The love of the homeland is part.
It's not a hadith. It's not a hadith.
A weak hadith,
it's
or
not
a
even
saying
hadith.
that
No.
okay, a saying that is attributed by some, perhaps out of ignorance, to the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. But حب الوطن من الإيمان, the love of one's homeland, is part of religious faith, right? So the regime would justify and legitimize its own existence at home on a very religious basis, right? It wasn't at home. It wasn't telling people that we're secular and we want, secular humanism and we want just development and progress without religion guiding it. Of course not. It was justifying itself on the basis of religion, and it had loads of mulayan and ulama alongside it in that endeavor. But then when it was speaking to the West, it was using the language, just as we'll see Ahmad Massoud is using, about radical Islamism and terrorism, etc., etc. And here's the thing, is that whilst people in Afghanistan are generally rural, or there may be high levels of illiteracy, people aren't idiots. Over times, they can feel that you're saying two different things. Now, the Taliban, for example, and this is something that could be used as a point of criticism against them, right? Someone would say, well, if you are savvy, if you have enhanced communications, you wouldn't be like this. There are two sides to the coin. But with the Taliban, it's very clear that what you see is what you get, okay? We are, traditional Afghan Muslims at home and abroad. Abroad, we want good relations with everyone else, but we will never sacrifice and compromise on our principles and our culture, so on and so forth. Now, like I said, that's not a compliment of them, that's an observation. And you can throw that observation both sides. You could say, what a group of, you know, imbeciles for not catering to Western sensibilities, so on and so forth. But Ahmad Masood here is basically, for what we'll see in the quote that you're going to read out in a bit, Ahmad Masood here is basically following the Ashraf Ghani, not even the Ashraf Ghani, but the standard Gulf, autocratic Gulf regime playbook, which is appealing to Western sensibilities, even if those sensibilities are inherently or implicitly sort of criminalizing or demonizing Islam. Sangar, the floor is yours.
Okay, so JZ has a super chat of $1.99. Thank you very much. He says, bring back the Sardar Dawood flag. Good point. M2M has a £5 super chat. BBC interviewed a translator for the British troops in Afghanistan. He's isolated thing. Is this an isolated thing, or is this a widespread issue for translators stuck there? Honestly,
Should I answer this?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I would say, with regard to it's certain, I mean, the Taliban have come out again and again, basically assuring that they won't, go after or harm these translators. But what you have to understand, and what a lot of people don't understand, is that the Taliban are not the only concern for these translators. There's poverty, there's instability, there's war, there's conflict. Whilst things are comparatively better, we still don't know where we're going. And on top of that, these translators are, to a large extent, despised by large sections of society who see them as collaborators, as foreign agents, as traitors, as sellouts, and so on and so forth. So it's not just the fact that a Talib is going to come and kill these people that they don't want to remain in Afghanistan. They don't want to remain in Afghanistan also because there's instability, the economy is looking bad, as well as the fact that there's a massive social stigma associated with them because they worked with foreign forces. And we know, if those of us who've researched the war, we know that translators were oftentimes present during military operations. They were present during what were called enhanced interrogation techniques. They were present during night raids. So they're not just sort of seen as civilian workers for the machinery of the military occupation. They are seen, rightly or wrongly, as perpetuating and being active agents in the military occupation. So there's the social stigma associated with it as well, that I wouldn't blame them for wanting to leave Afghanistan.
So one more super chat, and then we will go to the quote. Hamed Sadat with £10 super chat says, black, red, and green of the flag resembles dark times of occupation, bloodshed for independence and prosperity / Islam. Funny that it represents the opposite of where the Ghani government stands for. This is a bit a historical aspect of the flag. Because those colors stand for how the flag basically was designed 100 years ago. But it was the flag of independence. When Afghanistan declared itself as independent from the British occupation, this flag was introduced. But
I actually think it was Nadir Khan. It wasn't Amanullah. I think under Amanullah we had that beautiful black flag with the white coat of arms.
All right. So the quote that we are going to read now is the one where he says, the United States and its allies have left the battlefield, but America can still be a great arsenal of democracy, as as Franklin D. Roosevelt said, when coming to the aid of the beleaguered British before the U.S. entry into World War II. So it's a great arsenal of democracy is the United States, and the United States can still be an ally of the national resistance.
free world and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and again, I think, this quote might have had any merit years ago, but not after signing of the Doha deal and the pullout of all foreign forces from Afghanistan. Good, good quote. I like his writing. Okay, so the next quote is: the Taliban is not a problem for the Afghan people alone. Under Taliban control, Afghanistan will without doubt become ground zero of radical Islamist terrorism. Plots against democracies will be hatched here once again. Now, here's so important about this particular quote is that during the 1980s, when Arab jihadis entered Afghanistan and participated in the Afghan resistance against the communists, those Arab jihadists were mainly going along with people like Ahmad Massoud. They were part of the fronts of Hizb Islami, Jamiat Islami, Ittihad Islami. All these parties were later part of the Northern Alliance against the Taliban, and these parties were also part of the democratic regime of the last 20 years. So it's very ironic that he talks about that under Taliban those terrible things will happen when in fact those Arabs who later became Al-Qaeda and threatened the United States and whatnot, those people first entered Afghanistan and they fought alongside his father for like 9 years. And now he's saying that under Taliban will those terrible things happen. Again, the last quote that I'm going to read on my part is: no matter what happens, my Mujahideen fighters and I will defend Panjshir as the last bastion of Afghan freedom. Our morale is intact. We know from experience what awaits us. Here again, he's saying Mujahideen, no, he's saying radical Islamist terrorists, and then he identifies as Mujahideen. So, yeah, I would say like make a decision.
Your poison.
Yeah, pick. You're either Mujahideen and Islamist, or you're not. You can be and Mujahideen and be for democracy, freedom, Western values. So that's a
Mujahid fi sabil al-FDD.
Yeah. Yeah. If you guys understand the reference, otherwise find FDD, Foundation for Defense of Democracies, then you will know what we're talking about. Anyway, so thus far the article of Ahmad Masood. Now, Waleed, I want to ask you, what is the potential of this armed resistance? Are they capable of resisting and even defeating the Taliban? Please.
So here's the issue that I have, right? So on the one hand, he's claiming that his family, his uncles, father's allies, from the beginning, from his father's time even, have just been stashing weapons, anticipating that this day would come, right? On the other hand, he's saying that he requires help from the West, okay? Now, over here, he's talking about a national sort of resistance. KJ Khan, can we mute some of the people spamming the live chat, please? Man, KJ Khan does not miss.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Bang, just like that. But in any case, so on the one hand, he's saying basically that Ahmad Massoud, died 20 years ago, right?
Yes.
So he's saying even before that, even whilst his father was alive, they've been stashing weapons. But now the resistance has barely started and he's asking for more weapons. Like, surely, if you are looking to get weapons, you'd just be like, let me fight this out for about a month, for example, get some battlefield success around the, let me get some recognition for my military prowess, my battlefield proficiency, let me gain the admiration of the West, then write this article, right? That's what I would suggest. But on the one hand, he's saying that Panjshir is basically armed to the teeth with weapons that have been collected over the last 20 years, but we need more help, okay? So with regard to if this is feasible. From a military perspective, it isn't, because we know that the Taliban have captured huge quantities of arms, ammunition, vehicles, etc. And these were obviously arms, ammunition, and vehicles that were American made. So they're pretty good. From a military perspective, we could assume it's pretty decent on a relative scale, especially in Afghanistan. So it's unlikely that the Taliban would really struggle, or it would take years to subdue Panjshir. The issue, and the Taliban know this, just as Ahmad Masood knows this isn't military. This is a political issue, okay? Just because the Taliban would be able to gain a military victory does not mean that that military victory would translate into political gains. And we know, those of us that read our political science or our history, we know that war is a continuation of politics by other means. But engaging in that war is not a beneficial sort of diversion from the politics that the Taliban want to pursue, which is why we mentioned earlier that you and I know, Sangar, that there is a delegation from Kabul currently in Panjshir. And that's obviously there for a reason, because if the Taliban wanted, and if it was in their interest to settle this militarily, we would have sort of seen some level of action right now. Perhaps we would have seen some kind of incursion. Perhaps we could even say that this delegation that's been sent to Panjshir is part of, let's say, a trick, and they're going to apply both. We don't know. But the fact of the matter is that the Taliban are weak politically just because they're vulnerable, because they've won this huge victory, but they're not weak militarily. So the feasibility of it isn't really a factor that I would take into account too much, primarily because I view this as a political problem. And the political problem, like we discussed at the beginning of this live stream, is that Ahmad Massoud and the constituency that he represents are basically motivated by, we don't want a Pashtun sat in Kabul ruling us. We don't really care if that Pashtun has one or the other ideological persuasion or is from one or the other tribal confederacy, because for these people, for better or worse, it's just sort of, this is the ethnicity is the only determinant. Kiran Kumar Bokisam has sent 40, I don't know what that currency is, but I'm going to assume it's Indian rupees. Thank you very much, saying, if possible, avoid violence and beat them with brains. I would agree. But yeah, that's how I would see it. How do you see it? Would you agree with me in sort of viewing this as a political issue?
Yes. So what I have observed in the last couple of months is that the people who were part of the Northern Alliance, they are very internally divided. I mean, the day the regime collapsed, a delegation of the previous regime with a large group of people who were from the Northern Alliance, so Salahuddin Rabbani, Khalili from Hizb Wahdat, and many of these guys, they all went to Islamabad to meet Pakistani leaders. Wali Masood, Ahmad Masood's uncle, came out and he said that basically the regime of Ashraf Ghani has collapsed and Amrullah Saleh is a joke because he has declared himself as a president, which reminds me, by the way, if Amrullah Saleh is currently present, then he's the second non-Pashtun president of Afghanistan. So
the first Panjshiri president.
Yes, yeah. So okay. So anyways, so they are not all in Panjshir, all preparing to fight. Some of them are in Islamabad making backdoor deals with the Pakistanis. We have Wali Masood, the uncle of Ahmad Masood, who is basically giving interviews, insulting Amrullah Saleh. So they are internally also very divided. It's not like they will all be part of one united front against the Taliban. And then you have Sami Sadat, that general who is from Kandahar, from Helmand, from Lashkargah. We have Hibatullah Alizai, who is also a Pashtun. They were all leaders of the commandos and special forces, etc. And these guys are also in Panjshir with Ahmad Massoud, who last year wrote an article basically saying that his biggest beef with the government is that it's Pashtun, and now he has Pashtuns who are supposedly part of his resistance. Those elements basically reveal that this resistance is not very strong. It's not internally coherent. They don't have a unified vision. And plus, the West has basically abandoned them. Which
Exactly,
yeah.
because if we think of it, you mentioned Sami Sadat and Hibatullah Alizé. These were people more than happy to fight for President Ashraf Ghani, right? Whereas Ahmad Massoud's issue is not with, it's not, I know this, it's not necessarily with President Ghani or with the Taliban, it's with what he says is a 200-year-old conflict. So there's a glaring fault line there. But I think we've discussed basically this article, what it means, the background to it, what's motivating this sort of resistance or this sort of movement. I think we've done a pretty comprehensive job of that. But there is one thing.
Yeah. Okay, you first, please.
Eu video mi dete po WhatsApp ki lejele de. Aga eu chama to reply okay. Da video e quote kra a wai chipakche
Yes, I got it.
Wali Masood yazya Masood Amrullah Saleh spakawe karde.
Yeah.
No aga ka play ko eu zaiber tole oguru.
Okay, so right, we're here back again. Okay. So I'm going to mute myself. So
DS has sent a super chat of €4.99 saying hashtag peace for Afghanistan. From the bottom of my heart, I agree.
We saw a tweet and a story from Amrullah Saleh, the ex-director and head of NDS, who says he's going to launch a resistance from Panjshir Valley. Do you think it's a serious challenge, or this is?
No, Amrullah Saleh now he's nothing. You know.
We saw a tweet and a story from Amrullah Saleh, the ex-director and head of NDS, who says he's going to launch a resistance from Panjshir Valley. Do you think it's a serious challenge, or this is?
No, Amrullah Saleh now he's nothing. You know, Amrullah Saleh, all the Panjshiri, they are against Amrullah Saleh. Oh, because Amrullah Saleh was very near to Ashraf Ghani, and all the time Amrullah Saleh supported Ashraf Ghani in the cost of the will of the people of Afghanistan, particularly Panjshiri people. They are nothing now.
Very interesting. We saw.
Okay. This is very interesting because we've spoken about ethnicity a lot in this podcast, in this live stream, sorry. And that isn't accidental. It's because the lines of reasoning that Ahmad Massoud has used has invoked ethnic dimensions, we could say. But now here's the thing, right? President Ashraf Ghani is seen, rightly or wrongly, as having been racist, ethnocentric.
I would
divisive.
agree that he is quite racist.
I've heard that his racism doesn't just extend to non-Pashtuns, but it it extends to many.
He
many
also doesn't
Pashtuns.
like your kind. Ashraf Ghani doesn't like people from
apparently
Kandahar.
So.
Yeah.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
So, but this is the point. Look, it's one thing using the ethnic thing for politics and being personally racist, and being personally racist is something it's difficult to prove, but let's say divisive, ethnocentric, Ashraf Ghani is seen as all of that. But now here's the thing. Amrullah, like at face value, he wasn't. His vice president was Amrullah Saleh. Now, Frank Adada was asking, where's ahmed-waleed from? On my father's side, I am from Karabakh district in Kabul province. On my mother's side, I'm from Kandahar. On my father's side, we are actually settlers or migrants from the late 18th century from Kandahar. So I'm from Kandahar / Kabul. We've also got donations, super chats. Ahnaf Habib saying the American appetite for war is gone, and he's sending 20 Canadian dollars.
Thank you very
Likely, the
much.
Panjshir rebellion will persist for a few weeks at most, but once the international recognition for the emirate from China and others begin, it's a game over for them politically. Okay. SSKK is sending $5. What games are the Pakistanis playing with the Panjshiris and Hazaras in Islamabad? Negotiating the best deal for the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan or trying to screw over the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan? I'll answer this question just after I made this point. Amrullah Saleh, we discussed in another live stream. One of the reasons that he got into an argument or a feud with that MP, with the Pashtun Atakzai Naib Zadeh MP from Badghis, was that Amrullah Saleh wanted Pashtun villagers who were illiterate to have on their ID cards that they were Tajik. Okay? So, and Amrullah Saleh has opposed the peace process or any idea of making peace with the Taliban since Hamid Karzai's presidency on the sole basis that this will lead to what he sees as Pashtun predominance.
He has
Now,
actually said that. He has
He's
said
actually-
that in his statements. It's on Facebook, YouTube, on Twitter.
So we could say this is what I want people to understand. Whilst we're talking about ethnicity in Afghanistan, you also have to take into account just people's ambition, people using ethnicity here and there to further their points and their interests. So we've got a Pashtun supremacist president, a Tajik supremacist vice president, both of them working hand in glove because they both don't want to make peace with the Taliban, to the extent that Amrullah Saleh's fellow Panjshiris have now fallen out with him because he was friends or because he was part of the government of a Pashtun supremacist. So this is essentially the kind of complicated scenario that we have in Afghanistan, right? Now, Go for Freedom has donated 19 Danish kroner. Thank you very much. I'm going to answer SSKK's question. Biya karar no da live stream bim khatam ko. So what games are the Pakistanis playing with the Panjshiris and Hazaras in Islamabad? Negotiating the best deal for the Taliban or trying to screw over the Taliban? Sangar, what's the jawab?
Okay, so this question is very important. You see, Pakistan as a nation state has many internal problems, okay? They have internal division based on ethnicity. There is socio-economic differences within different regions. And this is also why Pakistan was, on the one hand, supporting the regime in Afghanistan by allowing US supplies to go through the Karachi port into Afghanistan. And on the other hand, they were supporting the Taliban. They have a vested interest in keeping a weak and divided Afghanistan. And so that's why they were playing both sides. Now, suppose that we have a strong, centralized, powerful, stable country in Afghanistan. The Pakistanis might think, okay, if this country becomes very strong and powerful and its politics are not entirely aligned with ours, then we will have two countries on two sides, India and Afghanistan, with whom we have to bargain and maybe even have some political issues. And Afghanistan and Pakistan have major political issues because of the Durand Line and because of the water that flows through Afghanistan into Pakistan. So this is why I would say that the Pakistanis would try to help a opposition against the Taliban. And we have discussed this, I think, in a previous live stream as well. If the Taliban succeed to create a Islamic emirate and basically a very conservative Islamic regime next to Pakistan, what we'll have is that all these religious groups and parties in Pakistan, all these jihadist groups, they will all say, well, if the Taliban in Afghanistan can create a Sharia-based Islamic government, then why not in Pakistan? So this will further destabilize Pakistan and create more political problems. So that's why I think that Pakistan may have kept a relationship with Hizb Islami, Jamiat Islami, Hizb Wahdat, Ittihad Islami, and all these parties, so that in case someday, if it happens that they have to rely on them to form some sort of opposition against the central government, they can always call on them. And they didn't even wait a second. These guys flew into Islamabad on the day the regime collapsed. So yeah, so that's why I think those guys are in Pakistan. And I don't think that it's in the best interest of Afghanistan or Pakistan to continue playing these games. What we need is, first of all, and I want to go back to the super chat we received where DS said peace for Afghanistan. Guys, you know, we talk about politics, we have our opinions, whatever, but what's most important is what we stand for here at Afghan Eye. We stand for a united, peaceful Afghanistan where we no longer fight with each other. Whether it's the previous government, the Northern Alliance, all these different parties, or the Taliban, what we want as Afghans, what we want as a platform, as Afghan Eye, is that all these sides reconcile with one another, resolve their differences, and just be part of a peaceful, stable Afghanistan. We don't want any more wars based on ethnicity or based on different competing political interests. And once we have a stable and peaceful Afghanistan, why not have a stable, peaceful relationship with our neighboring countries? At the end of the day, Pakistan is a Muslim country. A significant part of the people in Pakistan have the same language as Afghans. We share the same religion, same culture, and based on those mutual interests, we should be allies. We shouldn't be fighting each other. Pakistanis shouldn't support this group or that group to create instability and conflict in Afghanistan. Pakistanis shouldn't play a double game. We have had many Pakistanis here on our live stream. We have an open attitude towards Pakistanis because we believe that we shouldn't be enemies. We can be friends. We can respect each other. And sadly, what we see is that Pakistan is basically, at least this is my observation, okay? I might be wrong. But sadly, we see that Pakistan is falling back in the same pattern of trying to undermine who's in power in Kabul by supporting its opposition.
Well, I would say that there's also the angle of what would I say? I would say that there's also an angle of perhaps the Pakistanis trying to exert some sort of pressure, like perhaps to ensure somewhat the stability of the Taliban by making sure that it's more palatable to the international community. Imran Khan, I think, has spoken to the British Foreign Secretary, the Danish Foreign Secretary about developments in Afghanistan. And we know that back in the day, Imran Khan was pretty clear in saying that he views the war in Afghanistan as one against foreign occupation. And if it's a war against foreign occupation, then it's a jihad. Those were Imran Khan's words. So I think it's also possible that perhaps the concern in Pakistan is that you'll have a weak, tottering, sort of internationally isolated, almost sort of a reliant regime on Pakistan that would not necessarily serve its interests. So perhaps we could interpret this as Imran Khan or his government trying to facilitate a roadmap for which a government in Afghanistan can be more, quote, inclusive and thus more palatable to the international community. Akash Sharma sent a super chat, thank you very much, $2 Canadian, and is asking, do you want or are you okay with Sharia in Afghanistan? Now, my stance on this has always been pretty clear. I'm not an Islamic jurist. I'm not authority in any of the religious sciences. I don't even know what the Sharia would entail in Afghanistan, given that the Sharia itself is flexible for the local circumstances. What I have always been clear on is that foreign modes of governance or foreign values or ideologies should not be implemented by the force of a gun in Afghanistan. So really and truly, my only answer is that any government that reflects the aspirations, the visions, and the values of Afghans, and something that most values the largest amount of Afghans can resonate with, I'm okay with. Whether that's a religious system, whether it isn't. That's what I would say.
Let me just answer Jay-Z's question. Please respond to the Haji Mullah incident. So Haji Mullah is a commander of the armed forces of the previous regime. There are videos circulating of him being executed by the Taliban. You can hear the gunmen saying, this is so-and-so, he has killed so many people, and now this is his fate. And then basically he's sitting on the ground, he's with his hands tied up, and he's executed. Well, this is basically everything that the Taliban have been telling us that they won't do, okay? They said we will give everyone an amnesty, everyone is forgiven, and everyone can just continue their own lives. But then we see this video leaked on social media, and the Taliban have not responded yet, at least not to my knowledge. But if there are any sort of negotiations going on right now in Kabul between Taliban, Dr. Abdullah, Hamid Karzai or anything, this issue needs to be addressed. If that's really the case, if this is really an execution of an army officer by the Taliban, then it seriously damages the credibility of Taliban when they say we give amnesty to everyone. So yeah, but again, you know, I don't know all the details. I know just as much as you guys know because I saw the video. But yeah, so until further notice, then we have to find out what happens. So okay.
Anyways, final question, because I'm getting asked about General Sami Sadat's whereabouts. I believe he is in Panjshir, yes. But in any case, guys, thank you very much for attending this live stream of ours. Lean out the ride. Once again, 55 Norwegian kroners saying, wanted to support. I myself, being Pakistani, do not want Iran 2.0 in Afghanistan. And the aftermath of all of this, inshallah, please, peace will prevail.
Ameen.
Inshallah,
yes.
Peace will prevail. Thank you very much for another donation, Lean out the right. I'm glad you enjoy our content and worthy. Someone's asking me, where is Fawad Aman? I don't know. The moment I find out, I'll convene an emergency live stream to let you guys know the whereabouts of Fawad Aman, as well as everyone else you keep asking me about. But in any case, guys, thank you for attending this live stream. Today we discussed sort of the background, the backstory to Ahmad Massoud's ascent in Afghan politics, his motivations, and we've sort of discussed how that started and where it is right now. Now, personally, my views on Ahmad Shah Massoud are clear, and my views on the Massoud clique or the Massoud clan, I actually have a word for them, a name for them. I call them Massoud Khel, right? It's pretty well known, but I do personally believe that the best way to solve this is through peace and the political process, because I really don't want to see another event that can be misconstrued as being ethnic and then having people being radicalized because of it and having to deal with it for another number of decades. So that's my personal view. I'm sure Sangar would sort of somewhat resonate with that. But in any case, guys, thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. I am watching the like button. Please, can we get a further round of likes? Share our...
There are 300 of you currently watching. Can we have 400 likes for this video, please?
There we go.
At least 400. Come on. It's possible.
So that's basically the stance that I have. I think that this should be resolved politically. I think that this new government in Afghanistan, if we can call it that at this stage, is a challenge. It is a very challenging period, almost a make or break, but I do think it's an opportunity as well. And if we are to utilize that opportunity, then we need to sort of prioritize a peaceful sort of incorporation of these different aspects, even if they are unpalatable, like Masood Khail. But in any case, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking the video, sharing it on your timelines. And if you want to support a platform which is grassroots, which is independent, which started off with me with my laptop that was barely functional at the time, but just nothing but the raw interest and the sense of duty to provide a counter narrative to what was being said about Afghanistan back then over the past 2 decades as well as now, then please share our content, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to get involved with our project, like I said, that is independent, that is not supported by any sort of organization or political entity, then please do consider either a super chat for us, or becoming a patron on our Patreons, or donating to us directly on PayPal. And finally, I think above all, we owe a massive thanks, not to myself, not to Sangar, not even to Ahmad Masood, but to KJ Khan, who literally sat here on the live chat with a machine gun, just shooting everyone that stepped out of line. I appreciate it. This is probably the live stream with the most stable live chat. I have to acknowledge that the disciplinary sort of the frequency of it was intense, but man, KJ Khan, thank you for all of that. And I'm sure there were a couple of people in the live chat saying, can we have a KJ Khan Appreciation Society? I agree.
Yes.
But yeah, KJ Khan is the Iron Chat Amir.
Yeah.
So yeah, in any case, guys, thank you very much. And up until next time, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.